That's right. I'm here with J.D. Gordon, who served as the Director of National Security for the Policy Office under President Donald Trump's campaign. J.D., thanks so much for joining us today. I want to talk a little bit about the news of the day. Obviously, a lot of conversations here in Washington about communications that occurred between the Russian ambassador and advisors to President Donald Trump during his campaign for president. You spoke with the Russian ambassador at the Republican National Convention. Can you characterize this conversation for me? What did you guys talk about? How did this unfold?
Well, yes, I talked to Ambassador Kislyak there in Cleveland, but I talked to dozens of other ambassadors there in Cleveland as well. There was a program during the GOP convention called Global Partners in Diplomacy, and it was run by the State Department in conjunction with the Heritage Foundation. So I gave remarks there. Senator Sessions gave remarks there. A number of people involved with our campaign were there. And so after my remarks, I was able to speak with Ambassador Kislyak for a few minutes. It was a conversation where I said that we should have better relations with Russia. We should work together against common threats like radical Islamic terrorism. We should have listened to the Russians when they said Tamerlan Tsarnaev, who is a Chechen refugee in America, he was in Dagestan training with jihadists. The Russians warned us, but what happened? Apparently, the Obama administration didn't take it seriously. Well, Tamerlan and his brother Dzhokhar blew up the Boston Marathon. So basically, in that time that I talked to the ambassador, it wasn't long, it was cordial, and then also I talked to the Ukrainian ambassador in the same day.
So who all was there when you spoke with the ambassador? Obviously, this was a panel, and I understand there were as many as 50 other ambassadors at this event. But when you spoke with the Russian ambassador, who was with you during that time?
Well, there were several other ambassadors around me when I talked to him the first time after my remarks, and then I talked to him at an evening reception later in the day, and Carter Page was standing next to me when I talked to the ambassador that time.
And I understand this is the outreach to the Russian government and the Russian ambassador particularly was sort of a larger initiative by the Trump campaign, wanting to have better relations rather than worse relations that developed under the Obama administration. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, clearly when we have common interests with a country like Russia, like the threat from jihadists, we want to work with them to combat common threats. But I would just say that it's important to understand, as we characterize this, that this Global Partners in Diplomacy had a week with the Republicans in Cleveland. Then the same group of ambassadors went to Philadelphia to go to their convention, to the Democrat National Convention, to meet Hillary's campaign, to meet DNC staff. So a group of ambassadors, dozens, 50-some, spent time with us, but then they spent time with the Democrats. So a lot of this reporting's just been out of control, out of proportion. And when President Trump says things like there have been real leaks but fake news, what he means is that the leaks were real about perhaps conversations people had, but the narrative that a lot of people tried to make, like the New York Times and others, that there was some collusion going on or some constant communication was just false. It's a false narrative. So that's when the president says real leaks, fake news, that's what he means. The narrative that there was some collusion going on was entirely false.